public setting, that's when also we started building up that critical mass that allowed the service to grow of its own and get a lot of word-of-mouth attention. So I've had a lot of painful experiences with digital rights management, DRM, and data lock-in, and I don't really recommend it to anyone. And it's very interesting to see now that even Apple and Amazon are moving away from DRM as a method for protecting content. So it's not that there isn't a legitimate business case for people to want to protect their data, but it may just be that it's really tough for small companies to provide that data protection and hope to grow really well. And any other questions?
What's
Sure.
the purpose of embedding stuff into your site?
Well,
like doing it yourself?
Sure. So I think maybe that really speaks to sort of composition at a certain level. I have a friend who I hope to introduce to the class at some point who's doing a small startup that's a content aggregator. And so sometimes, he sees a story on CNN that's, really cool, and he's really into sort of talking about the financial bubble. So he's written all sorts of little things about it. And he's found that, a lot of the major media outlets produce content in a way that actually doesn't highlight what people care about, like, say, the video or a very, graphic and interesting image that's associated with the story. So he basically shuffles the content around, writes his own sort of take on, what the story is about, adds a link to the original site, and reposts it. And his reposts of this content actually often get a higher Google ranking than the original story. So if you're interested in content aggregation, you become interested in, like, how do you compose the information in such a way that search engines care about it more? And ultimately, if you have to think of a search engine as another user of your site, because that's what a crawler is. The crawler sort of visits all of your pages and then digests them and comes up with a ranking for it. So if you treat that user well, the search engine will treat you well in return, in some sense. So that's a reason for embedding in. It's and like I said, there's so much that new that can be created out of existing things. Like the internet meme example I gave. I don't know that anyone's ever combined lolcats and Kanye and Rick Astley into one piece already. But I sort of did it for the purpose of the class because I thought, well, if I'm gonna beat it to death, I might as well beat it to death the right way. So composition again is a really powerful way of building visibility to your site.
It's a little bit tangential, but what do you think is like the long-term viability of companies who like piggyback on other companies like user base, like Zynga, for instance? Like, how much do the owners and the investors worry about the parent company kind of pulling the rug out?
This is my favorite question of the class so far, of the entire course. I think it's a fascinating topic because very rare is the service that's actually grown sort of completely organically without having any kind of connection to some other service. Facebook is actually one example where it didn't really have quite as much sort of direct online growth as it did external word of mouth. But if you look at almost everything else, I mean, even Google grew at a time when the web was growing, and They did very little marketing of any kind, so they basically relied on organic word of mouth, expansion of the site. And fortunately, the web was growing really fast, and other search engines weren't keeping up, and so their search engine results were way better than everyone else's. So they got the word of mouth. But if you look at just about every service out there, YouTube actually got its start. They intended for it to be a site for people to post eBay products that were going to be sold. And the code that they written to embed their videos on eBay turned out to work just right for MySpace as well. So when they realized that the eBay model wasn't, going so well, they started, embedding stuff on MySpace pages, and it took off there. And YouTube completely transcended its connection with MySpace. And Zynga, I think, has an opportunity to sort of, now that it's so well established on Facebook, it has an opportunity to sort of create, its own little marketplace outside on its own web pages, and basically develop the user base there.
Are they taking a risk, like longer until they do that? Like, if Facebook were to change the rules, like today or tomorrow, how much would that affect them?
Well, right. So Facebook is very capricious, right? A couple of years back, there was a Facebook course at Stanford, and that was when the Facebook app functionality first came out. And, that was also a time when Facebook apps were front and center on your profile, right? And then all of a sudden, not so long afterwards, Facebook decided to put them behind a tab that made them essentially invisible to casual users. And from being extremely visible, they went to being virtually invisible. And Zynga does run some risk of that. I think that Zynga is perhaps one of the most popular and active partners to Facebook at some level, and you can't kill your favorite partner. MySpace found that out. They were actually trying to block YouTube, and users hated that so much that they gave up, basically. But they did end up blocking a lot of other services, including iMeme. What iMeme had that allowed it to continue to survive was it also had very good search engine ranking on Google. So our traffic drivers were divided between MySpace users and Google search results, and then about 1/3 organic usage. So we had 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. So even losing a chunk of traffic drivers, we were able to maintain growth. So it definitely helps if you can have two sources of traffic. But yeah, it's a fascinating topic, and I think that one of the reasons I'm talking about mashups is because I want to invite people to think about how they can use the broader ecosystem to help spur the growth of their services. So I'm not going to spend way too much time on this, but there's a lot of mashup APIs. The one I want to single out in the context of the previous answer is Facebook Connect. Facebook Connect, if you implement it, is a very good way to gain knowledge about potential users, and to try and let the people who are interested in your service let their friends know about it. So Facebook Connect is a very powerful API for small startups that gives them an opportunity to have some additional visibility to people who might not otherwise see your service. And Twitter is also extremely the Twitter APIs are also extremely valuable in that context. So if I were to start something right now, those are the two APIs that I would sort of imagine implementing first if I wanted to help grow the user base on my service. um,